Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug video. And today I want to talk about wasted potential. Specifically, wasted character and story potential. And even more specifically, Luka and Kagami's wasted character and story potential during Season 4. Because oh boy, there's a lot of it. Now, when we're first introduced to Kagami and Luka in Season 2, they're clearly positioned from literally the moment you see them to be the alternate love interest. The antithesis of everything we know about Adrien and Marinette. Where Adrien's a lonely and slightly closed off person, trapped in a huge mansion with only his father for company and forced to dance to his every whim, Luka's the free spirit, who lives on a boat where he hosts all his friends regularly and is able to follow his own paths and pursue his own dreams. Where Marinette's bright, upbeat and sociable, Kagami's more subdued and aloof. In essence, their role in the narrative, at least at that early stage of the game, was to be the secondary option. To be everything that Adrien, or Marinette, couldn't be. To see whether the main characters would be more compatible with them instead. It's pretty textbook writing, and in basically all cases of this technique being used, it's proved that no, the main love interest was the better choice, and the new love interest is shuffled out the door and either becomes a secondary character, or is never heard from or referenced again. And honestly, this storyline started strong, and both of them felt fresh and interesting because they were so unique. Luka and Marinette were the exciting and romantic romance, the one with all the blushing and the grand gestures and the more overt flirting. Whereas Kagami and Adrien were more subdued, quiet and conservative with the occasional glimpse of extreme attraction, at least from Kagami's side. And these relationships, slowly but surely, worked their way to the forefront throughout seasons 2 and 3, gradually pushing Adrien and Marinette's whole thing to the background as it became clear that it wasn't working at that point in time. And so we have a little bit of a moment at the end of season 3, where it looks like Adrien's willing to try things with Kagami, and Marinette's going to do the same thing with Luka. And regardless of your ship, you should have been happy with this development simply because it allows all the characters involved to gain more depth. I mean, it was never in doubt that Adrienette was going to happen. You'd have to have your head in the clouds to somehow miss that that was the romance that was going to be the definitive one in the show. And it's not like every character needs to remain untainted. It's not the 1800s. They could have another boyfriend or girlfriend beforehand. And so it looked like we were in for a pretty interesting and exciting season 4 in regards to these kind of storylines. And then we actually made it to season 4, and we realized that nope, guess not. Guess we're not bothering to give our characters that sort of development or storyline at all, because literally in the first 2 episodes, these 2 ships get sunk. And oh boy do they get sunk hard. Seriously, the way in which Luka and Kagami just get dropped at the first sign of relationship trouble is just ridiculously funny to me for some reason. And did they even get one single kiss? Ooh, I mean maybe Kagami did, I can't remember, but Luka just got shut down. But whilst that was funny, the fact that after all that build-up, the relationships literally lasted 1 episode each was dank. Super, super dank. We basically saw 2 full seasons worth of storyline flushed down the drain in 1 episode. And don't get me wrong, I get why those relationships ended. But I feel like the narrative payoff would have been a lot more fulfilling if they'd held the course and kept up the little side ships for about half a season. That's all I'm asking. Just enough that people kind of get used to it, but not too long that people will either be mad if it ends, or mad that they feel like it's gone on too long. Because honestly, looking back from what's almost the end of season 4, the narrative potential of both Luka and Kagami's been completely squandered when they seemed like really promising characters. And we'll start with Luka. When we first meet him, he's the cool, handsome older guy that's such a free spirit, basically the love interest of every coming-of-age film of the 1980s. And over time, he and Marinette develop a mutual attraction that leads into a short-lived romance. A romance that ends when he can't get over the fact that she won't tell him the truth of what's going on in her life. And okay, yeah, this was actually a good episode, so I was willing to give it a chance as long as they actually did something interesting with the character and storyline afterwards. And they did start off kind of strong. They had Marinette be super awkward around Luka, with him getting upset that she keeps trying to avoid him and stop being his friend. And this was actually a really good idea. And it felt like the character's actions and life decisions were directly affecting the storyline. Things didn't just reset to how they were before. But then when this storyline ended, Marinette's character moved on with her life and went back to simping hard for Adrien whilst adopting Luka as a sort of pseudo older brother type figure. And that's all good, for her development and her storyline. But while she developed, Luka stagnated and became this weird amalgamation of a character. On one hand, he keeps throwing out all these weird hints that he's still in love with Marinette, which is just deep cringe. Stop it. And then on the other hand, he's just casually trying to set Adrien and Marinette up every chance he gets. So no big deal. This cool, fresh and enigmatic character is reduced to being the simpiest of simps. Basically, anytime he appears now, it's to give some life advice to Marinette before staring at her a little too long with a soppy look on his face. Ugh, look how they massacred my boy. And then this brings us to Kagami. This one was just sad. She got completely screwed over by Adrien, and she rightfully dumped his ass and severed their friendship. Good. Consequences and all that. It makes sense, and the storyline seemed to have lasting consequences, because as we mentioned before, she went from being enamored with him to basically hating his guts. And this was good. She stands up for herself and gets rid of a negative aspect of her life. But then after this, her character is completely tossed away for the most part. Unlike Luka, who still has a bit of a role to play in the overarching story as a good source of moral support for both Adrien and Marinette, Kagami basically drops off the face of the planet, and when she does appear, it's basically only as a cameo or to deal with her past relationship with Adrien, or to try and wingman Marinette. Of all the characters in the show, or at least among the teen characters, I think she had one of the more unique personalities on offer, and yet we so rarely see her. She's almost never used. It's just really wasteful. When they were introduced, they were both a breath of fresh air, new and exciting. And whilst obviously we weren't going to see them be the main love interests forever, I think they pulled the trigger on breaking things up way too soon, and sacrificed a pretty interesting storyline that looked like it would be a main focus before season 4 came out. And then on top of that, they didn't capitalize and use them for any unique or interesting side stories. They just dropped it. They let them stagnate, and they really killed off any sort of narrative momentum they might have had. And I think it's a really big old shame. Anyway though, those are just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think about Luka and Kagami? Wasted potential? Could they have done more with them? Or should they just stay in the background forever? I'm curious to hear what you think, so make sure to leave a comment and let me know.